Hello, this is Mr. Evilcheese, and this is my follow-up video to my 6 scale Clementine review, or whatever you want to call that last video. But this is the video where I show how I made it. And it was a struggle to do it, so I'll be going over that. Zombie Cat's not really going to be in this one, because I pretty much made it on my own, so she would just be kind of sitting there and not really saying anything. So I'm just going to do this video on my own. This video might be a little more serious than usual just because it's hard to remember everything that I did. But let's get started. So the first thing I looked for when I was going to make this figure was a head. Because if I couldn't find a good enough head, then I just wasn't going to make this because, I mean, if nothing would work, it would just be too hard to make it look like her. And I ended up finding one that I thought looked pretty damn close. I knew I would have to modify it, but I knew I could work with it. And that head is from a figure that's called the Crossfire Double Agent Zero, made by Very Cool Toys. And it's an Asian character, from what I can tell. But it kind of works for Clementine because she kind of looks Asian in the game. So, but once I got the head, I had to paint the face, the skin, had to add on the scar, had to paint around the eyes, change her eye color because they were the wrong color, paint her eyebrows on. And then I removed her hair because it was not right at all. What I was going to use was I found a very cheap Barbie head that had an afro, and I figured I could make that work, trim it down, but it was hard to work with. Then I seen online that some 6 scale customizers use what's called Tibetan lamb fur, which you can find on eBay. What I seen people do with that looks so realistic, so that's what I ended up buying, and I'm glad I did because it worked really well. I had to glue it onto her head piece by piece. It's a little tough, but I think it turned out pretty nice and realistic looking. So that's basically what I had to do with the head in the beginning. I also had to find a body. I know Clementine, she's like 16 or 17 in the final season, and even at that age she looks kind of short. So a full-size 6 scale female body is not going to work. So I was looking around and I've seen that Fison, or TV League now, had a petite body, which I figured would work. And I knew that you could stain the bodies, because I've accidentally stained them before with clothes that bleeded onto them. So I figured I could probably just use marker that's a similar skin color to her and stain it. So I got that body. One issue with it is the body had a fairly big chest, and she doesn't really have much of a chest in the game, so I had to perform some surgery on her breast, which was really weird, and Zombie Cat kept picking on me about it. But it looked really odd. But it didn't matter because the shirts and everything would be covering it up. But I did that, and then another issue I had was the legs were so skinny that they didn't fit the pants right, so I wrapped them in plastic wrap to make them thicker, and that did work. Another issue with this petite Fison body, which it annoys me that they do this, but with the petite one, the ankle pegs, the wrist pegs, and the neck peg are all smaller than pretty much every other 6 scale. So the head wouldn't go on it. I found after a while that a Marvel Legends head socket would fit on there. So I took a Peter Parker head, an extra one I had, and cut it up and glued that socket inside of the head I was going to use, and that worked. Fit pretty much perfectly. Now for the hat, that was a little tough. I seen hats online. I found a cheap one, this army hat, but definitely wasn't the right color. So I figured I'd buy it, take the stitches out, and use the pattern to make a hat using blue and white fabric. But that just didn't work too well. I guess my skills at sewing tiny little things is just not that good. It looked really bad, so I didn't end up using that. So I ordered another one of those army hats and just painted it, but the fit of it was just not that great. I was going to use it, but then Foo from Foo Reviews sent me a hat, and that one fit a lot better, and it's a very well made hat. So I ended up painting it. Well, I had to take the little symbol off the front of it. The hat is from a 6 scale figure of the character from the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling. And I had to take the little LA symbol off of it. That was pretty easy to get off. And then I painted it with fabric paint, which ended up turning out pretty good. I cut the little D out of blue fabric, glued it on there, but I had to weather the hat, cut some little holes in it, and I think it turned out pretty good. I think if you look at the pictures, I think it's a little darker in the game. Usually when I think of a hat, I think of it as this color blue, maybe a slightly bit darker. But for the jacket, I found this denim set. I think I ordered it from Monkey Depot. It's made by, I think, AC Play. It comes with a jacket, some jeans, a little top, and some high heels, but I really only needed the jacket. And there's a black one and a blue one. And I ordered the black set. And they sent me the blue set by accident. So I messaged them and they had me return it, and they sent me the black one. And then when I finally got it, it was way too big for this petite little body, which I was kind of expecting, but it was even bigger than I thought. So unfortunately, I had to de-stitch it in multiple places and re-sew it to make it smaller. The sleeves, she rolls the sleeves up in the game, but they were still just way too long for that to look right. So I had to cut the sleeves down. Then I had to make iron-on patches to go on her shoulder and the one on her chest. And then on the back, I painted the big symbol of the deer head, or whatever you want to call that, the deer head made out of like motorcycle parts. This looks pretty cool. And that was very difficult to paint on. I just used white fabric paint. I actually printed it out the size I wanted it on regular paper and just stuck it next to the jacket as I was painting it on to try to get the size right. It wasn't easy. For the pants, I found Laura Croft from Tomb Raider 6 scale figure on eBay. They were just selling the pants by themselves, and I bought them because they were fairly close color. And I ended up cutting the pockets off because they're not in the right spots for Clementine's pants, and then sewing them back on in the right spots. Also, there's that line that goes down the front of each leg, and first I cut out a piece of fabric and like tried to sew on the line, but that just stuck up way too much. I just ended up taking it off and just kind of sewing a line down her pants, and then using fabric paint to darken it, and that seemed to work. Doesn't look exact, but I think it works good enough. These pants also did not fit the body. They were too big, so I had to modify them just like the jacket, which was not easy, but was able to do that. And the boots I found, once again, I think on Monkey Depot. They're just some black leather-like boots, and I didn't have to do a whole lot to them. I had to switch the laces because the laces were black, but I had to make them that orangish red. I couldn't find the right exact color of the orangish red. I just found red or orange, but I used the red. And I tried to go over it a little bit with orange paint, but it didn't really want to turn the exact color I wanted it without making it look like it's covered in paint, so I just left it what it is, and I think it's once again close enough. And you can see there's some straps going around the back of their boots, but she has a strap that wraps all the way around, just one strap that wraps all the way around both boots, and I had to cut those ones off and make my own, which worked out pretty good. I had to get a belt buckle for each of them, and I just used the feet the Fison came with to stick inside the boots because it doesn't have its own peg holes like some boots do. Now for her gray, or I guess it's more of a white, I think it's supposed to be a white hoodie, but it's very dirty and almost makes it look like a light gray. So I ended up finding this light gray 6 scale hoodie made out of actual cotton material with a zipper and everything. But once I got it, once again, it was way too big. This one was meant for a guy, so it was extra big. And I ended up modifying it to fit her, and I cut off the sleeves so they wouldn't be too bulky. But it just turned out to be too bulky no matter what because the material was just too thick. Her underneath shirt, I ended up just getting a small piece of fabric and making a little, well, someone called it a dickie, which I looked up what a dickie was because I didn't know, but it's just a fake shirt that you really just see underneath a shirt you put over it. Just a little sliver of a shirt that wraps around your neck. It's not a full shirt. That's basically what she has, just so it wouldn't make everything too bulky, because her clothes fit pretty tight in the game, even though she's wearing layers. So after I did all that, I was ready to paint the skin. I already painted the hands and the head to match, so now I just had to deal with the Fison body. I had to try to stain it. I know I stained Fisons with Sharpies before, the black Sharpie, and it didn't come off. So I bought various shades that look close to her skin color to try to stain it the color I wanted, but unfortunately it was not working like it did before. It did not want to stay on, it just rubbed off. Even if I let it sit for a couple days, it would still just rub off and wouldn't be the right color. I had so many different permanent markers that I tried that just looked like they should be the right shade until I tried it and they just weren't. They were off, and then when you put it next to the head it was weird, and I thought maybe I could just paint the skin on the hands to match what the marker did, but like I said, the marker wouldn't stay on, so it just was not going to work. So I thought, well, acrylic paint can be flexible. So I've used it on things before for costumes where it flexes and doesn't chip. So I thought, well, maybe it'll work on this Bison body, but nope. After I painted it on, I let it dry for a while. It just put on a ton of coats, let it dry for a while, and it just chipped and cracked instantly. As soon as I tried to move it, it just cracked and broke off. And when I tried to pull it off, it came off real easy, so that just was not going to work. But at that point, I was looking at the body, and the shape was just not right. Like, it was just too skinny. The Bison body was just, I couldn't use it. I couldn't color it, so I had the idea of getting a plastic body and just painting it, because really, I don't need to see her joints. And there is some where the neck joint doesn't show. So I got a very cool 6 scale female body. And once I got that body, I had to modify it. I had to cut her legs down. I had to cut a chunk out of her thigh and out of her lower part of her leg to make her shorter. And that worked pretty good. And I just used the feet that came with it. But an issue I had is the hands didn't fit. Because remember, the old Bison body had very tiny pegs on the wrist, so the hands wouldn't fit on these pegs. And I tried using bigger hands and they just looked too big on her. So I took the smaller hands and got a drill and just kind of very carefully drilled the hole, made it a little bigger. And that worked. Now they can fit on this body. Kind of a pain in the ass, and I was worried I would drill right through the hand, but luckily I didn't. But that created another problem. These hands, the wrists aren't very long on these hands, so it left a very big gap between her hand and her wrist where you see the joint. And it looked pretty bad, and I thought, well, it'll be fine, but it just bothered me so much that I ended up getting Sculpty and sculpting her wrist longer, which was not easy, but I did that. I had to repaint the hands again, and it worked for the most part. I just wish I wouldn't have had to do that, damn it. But of course, now that I have this new body, which is slightly bigger, like wider all around, because remember that Bison body I thought was too tiny. Well, now, because of that, because this body's a little bigger, the jacket doesn't fit anymore, and the pants don't fit anymore. Now for the jacket, I was thinking about trying to resize it, but it was too hard to get to the size it was, and I think I didn't have enough material left to make it bigger because I trimmed off all the excess. So I was luckily able to order another jacket. It sucked that I had to, because I had to buy it twice. So once I got the jacket, I had to modify it again, because this one was still too big even for this body. So I had to modify it and make it just a little bit smaller. I had to make the patches again, iron them on again. I had to draw or paint on the design on her back again, cut down the sleeves again. So once I did all that, the jacket was finally finished for this body. And just like with that, the pants were now too small, and I couldn't find the pants again on eBay. I was trying to find it, couldn't find them. Looked on other 6 scale parting out websites, couldn't find it. So I just luckily had enough excess on the pants to make them a little bigger again, and it works. However, there are some issues, like you see on her butt, there's like that ugly stitching, but I couldn't really do anything about it because there wasn't enough left over to fix that. And down around her calves, just sticking out of her boots a little bit, you can see that there's some extra material that I had to sew on. But it could have been worse. I wasn't even going to bother with that thick hoodie that I made. It was just too thick, like I said, and now with this bigger body, it's just not going to work. So I got some really thin material, which I used for my handkerchief, because it's very thin, and just made a hoodie out of it, which was hard making one out of scratch, because it's really hard to fit things. Like, some people probably had a lot of practice at it and could do it easily, but I have a lot of trouble getting things to fit. And it seemed like it should have been something simple to do, but it was hard. So I had to make that. I cut the zipper off the old one and sewed it onto this one, just a bit of it, to make it look like it's on there. It doesn't actually work. You can't unzip it or anything. And I made a little hood and sewed it on there, but I thought that would be easy because it's just a hood. But nope, that was difficult too. You can't put it up though. It's just made to lay there, because if I made it big enough to put up on her head, then it would be too big when you put it down on her shoulders. And she never puts it up in the game anyway, so it didn't need to go up on her head. And of course I had to dirty that up. So now that I got all that done, I had to try to paint the skin again. I started with the arms, the forearms. The forearms are fine, they're easy. Just painted them. Because they're plastic, it didn't matter. Now the neck and chest are a rubbery material. They can flex because there's a joint in the neck. And I was kind of worried about that it could flake off again. But I tried painting it, and it did. It flaked off again. So I tried the staining thing again. I tried the Fison using Sharpies. Once again, it did not work. There's only one color that would stay on, and it was like, made it very bright orange, and that was not right. So they had the idea of using liquid latex, because you can color it, and it's flexible. And I did that, and it looked really good, and you can move it around. But then a couple days later, it got slimy and bubbling up, and looked like she had some kind of crazy disease. And I'm like, damn it! And I don't know why I did that, because I've made lots of things out of latex, and they never did that. I don't know why this did. Maybe because of the color of paint I used had something in it. I don't know. But that wasn't going to work, so I had to take all that off. And Zombiecat actually looked up to see how you could stain them, and she found that you can use eyeshadow makeup to dye Fisons or rubbery bodies. And I thought that was kind of weird. Like, I don't know much about women's makeup, but she said she could believe that that could work from what people said, and she's used it, so she said it's hard to get off. So I figured, well, I could try it. And I put it on, and it works. I was very surprised. You put that on and it stains the body. You just got to find the color you want, and I actually bought one with multiple colors and mixed it till I got the right skin color, and it worked really good. And I haven't had an issue with it yet, so I guess that's how you stain a Fison body. Well, this ain't a Fison, but still close enough with the rubbery part. Oh, one thing I did have to do, I forgot to mention, with the hair, I had to trim it. And then I had Zombiecat put it into the little bun in the back. So now at that point, Clementine was done. And then I could just work on the accessories, which was a lot more fun and a hell of a lot easier to do. Some things were super easy, like the knife. I just bought a knife that looks pretty much exactly like the knife in the game. I just had to paint the handle. I did make the blade on it look a little more silver, because the one I got looked kind of gray. I mentioned in the previous video about the bow and arrow where I had two different ones that I was looking at. One, I don't even remember where it came from, but I just ordered it. And the other one came with the Hot Toys 6-scale Abigail Whistler from the movie Blade Trinity. And I ended up just giving her the other bow and using hers as Clementine's, because I just thought it looked closer. And I had to weather it, paint it, and paint the arrows. And I actually ordered the arrows. I think they were Hawkeyes or something. I made the quiver. She doesn't have a quiver in the game, but I just wanted one. So I made one out of just some leathery like material. And I bought a little tiny belt and just used the belt as the strap and painted it black. And it wasn't too hard. As for Rosie, I bought a Mr. Z 6-scale Pitbull figure, because she's a big muscular Pitbull, and so is this one. And it looks a lot like her. The face is a little different, but when I got it, it was a boy dog because it had male parts. So I had to cut them off and sand it. Also, I had to cut the tail off because she has a cropped tail. I had to paint her fur because the color wasn't right. Another thing I did was I did do a little bit of sculpting on her face, which I forgot to mention in the other video, because she had like these sunken in parts on her face that weren't right. So I tried to smooth that out a little. Then I painted her, added her chain, and I think that was pretty much it for Rosie. Oh, her eyeballs too I had to paint too, because they are the wrong color. Clementine's book bag, or backpack, was something that I really wanted to make. And I was just going to buy a backpack that looked as close as I can get it. And one I found, I ended up ordering it and it came and it was humongous. It was meant for a male figure, but it was really big even for a male figure, and it would just not work at all. But I ended up cutting it up and using the material to make a smaller one, and that way I can make it look as exact as I could get it. And I think it did end up looking pretty exact. It might be a little bit off. I had to paint it though to get the color right, or close to the color. I had to add some straps. All the straps go over the front of her shoulders I took off of one of the other book bags I bought, and I did modify them a little bit. So yeah, it was this one was a pain in the ass, but this one I kind of enjoyed making. It just took a while. The duffel bag, I ended up buying a duffel bag that was similar. And really the only thing I had to do when I got it was paint it and weather it. Not a whole lot else to do. I thought about taking the side pockets off because they're not on the one in the game, but I kind of like the side pockets, so I just left them on. The duffel bag in the game has duct tape on it, so I put that on there. Made it look like duct tape. And I think that worked out pretty well. I made the axe. I mentioned this in the other video, but I bought an axe on eBay, and it had, the head of it is metal and the handle is wooden, which is really nice. The only thing wrong with it was the color and the shape of the handle, because the handle had like a square shape to it, rectangular shape, and I had to round it off with a Dremel. And then the axe part, I painted the red on and then made it look like it's been weathered and used, and then put all the wrap on the handle and then bloodied it up, and that's about all I had to do with that. Disco Broccoli, he was tough. He actually was a little frustrating because he was just so small, but I made him out of Sculpty, mostly out of Sculpty. I used wire for his arms and then put little tubes around them and a little bit of Sculpty and sculpted his hands. I had to do that twice because the first ones ended up too big. Parts of his vest and his sunglasses I made out of pieces of plastic. Well, I made the big part of his head separate and then glued it on after, and then painted him. The shotgun from season 3, I just bought a shotgun, and then I bought one of those little ammo things. I don't even know what you call it, where you put all the shells in it, and I glued it to the top similar to how her gun was, and just painted it and weathered it, put blood all over it. I'll put the wrap on the handle too. James's mask was a little tough. I wasn't sure if I could do it, but I took a 6 scale head. I used one of the ones that I had that didn't really have any sculpted hair or anything. It looked pretty plain, and then put liquid latex over it, and I made it somewhat skin colored. It got really bumpy on the outside and ended up looking like Freddy Krueger or maybe Deadpool without his mask on. But when I took it off and turned it inside out, it was smooth there and kind of looked a little more like James' mask. James' mask is really wrinkly, so that's one thing that mine doesn't have. It's not very wrinkly, but I still think it looks like a skin mask. I cut the back of it and then took a little hole puncher and punched all the little holes in to put the string in to lace it up. Then I got some of that Tibetan lamb fur and made the hair, glued it on there, and that's pretty much it. What I mentioned in the other video, the head that I used just to put inside of James' mask, I just used a Laura X23 from Logan head and just painted it about the same skin color and painted the eyes. Cut the hair off, so I didn't really need the hair at all, so that would fit inside that mask. The little Trapper Keeper, that's not in the game, it's just something I wanted to make to put all of her little pictures and drawings and things she has in, because I thought that'd be cool. But it's made out of this like leathery material, and I put little pieces of cardboard in it to make it stiff, and I found a little snap and sewed that on there so it could actually snap closed. Made the little straps out of the same leathery material. All the little pictures and stuff I took from screenshots from the game and scaled them to the right size and printed them out. Some of them I printed out in regular paper, like the drawings. Some of the ones that are supposed to be photos I printed out on photo paper. The little Javier Garcia baseball card, he's the guy you play as in season 3, who's a baseball player. I just came up with a baseball card. I used an existing actual baseball card and just replaced it with his face, changed the name and everything, and tried to make it look like his team. And I made the back too. But for the mushroom and the Venus flytrap, I just bought the pots. but I had to sculpt the mushroom completely. And then for the Venus flytrap, I made the leaves out of, well, I just cut them off of a different plant, fake plant. And then the little mouths, or whatever you call the, the mouth looking part, I used pieces of cardboard, just cut them to the shape and folded them. And then I took one of them thick bristle brushes and just cut little pieces of it off, and then glued them on for the little teeth, or whatever you want to call them things, and then painted the whole thing. And then for a couple of the other plants, the fake plants to go in the vase and the real plants to go in a vase, I made both vases out of Sculpty and then painted them. And then I had to cut the teeny tiny little petals to make the flowers. The fake ones I used plastic, yellow plastic, and then glued them on. And then the real ones, I bought some artificial flowers at the Dollar Tree, purple ones, and just cut the petals out of that. And that was tough too because they kept wanting to fray and fall apart, but eventually I got them. The little cans that I made, most of them I used from pens that dried up that I had. I cut the pens with a Dremel to about the size of a can, and then I cut out a little piece of plastic in the shape of a circle to put on both sides of the can and glued them on, then painted it. And then I used photo sticker paper, printed the little images out and put them on there. Like Kenny's shitbird soup can, I designed that one. I took a Campbell's can and just made the name Kenny look like the Campbell's font, and then made the shitbird font look like a chicken noodle font, and I think that worked out. Some of the cans I just found some prank cans online and printed them out. And the Peaches can with Clementine's head, as I mentioned in the other video, is actually from Season 2 of the game. I just printed that out. A bunch of the cans I used the rust paint, which really does look like rust, and painted it on there to make them look like they're weathered. The homemade balm was a little tough to make. I had to sculpt the milk jug or bleach jug, whatever the hell that is. I think it's bleach, but it was hard making the handle, getting that shape right. It was tough. Yeah, I used Sculpty. I actually made a ball of tinfoil so I didn't have to make the thing solid Sculpty and use a whole bunch of it. And it would take forever to dry. But then I had to paint it, make it look weathered. And then for the little bag of jib jabs, which I believe is probably what they put the fertilizer in. It's probably an empty bag of jib jabs peanut snacks. But I made the label base as close as I can get from looking at screenshots of the game. I couldn't really see what the bottom picture was on there, but looking up peanut butter snacks, they look kind of like cheese curls, so that's what I tried to make them look like. But I printed it out in the photo sticker paper and then stuck them on tinfoil and then shaped it into what looked like a bag of peanut curls. And I put something in it, foam or something, so that it looked like it was full. Then I made a little wrap that goes around it and weathered it. For the bookcase, I just bought balsa wood. I got a couple different thicknesses and measured it to what seemed to be about the right height from what is shown in the game. I cut it with this utility knife, which is a little tough, but managed to get it done. And I glued it together, and then I used these tiny little nails that I have just to make it extra sturdy. That worked pretty good. And then I used actual wood stain to get the color, and it ended up looking really nice. It actually looks like it's a real wooden little piece of furniture. And I did do a little bit of weathering on it. The first aid kit was a clear plastic little case or container. It actually came with a black cat 6 scale figure. That's what they put her like a little face mask in so it didn't break. And I just painted this to look like it was white metal and it was starting to rust. So I had a little bit of silver and rust paint put on it. Then I printed out the little red cross symbol and glued it on there. Well, it was just sticker paper, so I just stuck it on. And I made the other bags of things like the Doritos and Evilcheese doodles and Scooby snacks. I just made them the same way I made the Jib Jabs. Twinkies box, I just looked up a flattened Twinkie box label and printed it out and folded it. Had to make a couple of them and get it the right size. The candle I just sculpted. I rolled rolled some sculpting into a cylinder, put the little dip in it, put the wick in it, and sculpted on the flame, and then painted the thing. And I put a lot of extra gloss up around the top to make it look like there's some melted wax up there. The little Ericsson banner, I could have just printed that out on paper and that was it, but just because I was being picky, I wanted it to feel like it was an actual banner, so I printed it out on iron-on transfer paper and ironed it onto some cloth, and it ended up being pretty stiff, which is good because that's how banners usually are. The geode, I took a translucent bead, a purple bead, and crushed it with some pliers, and then stuck the crushed up pieces into a little piece of sculpty and let it dry. Then I just painted the sculpty part gray, and it ended up looking like a geode with a little water bottle or energy drink or whatever it is that I painted, and then I added the sticker of Boomhauer from King of the Hill. I'm not sure what made me think of that. I don't even really watch that. I've seen that show several times, a long time ago, but something just put Boomhauer in my head that day. The way he talked, and I just thought it was funny. Thought it'd be funny if the name of a drink was something he rambled off. So I made a label and stuck it on there. The horseshoe I just made out of sculpty and painted it. Try to make it look like it was rusty. Little bag of pills and medicine. I just used a very tiny Ziploc bag to put them in. And I believe the orange pill bottles were the insides of pens, like the empty part. I just cut them to the right size. A little thing of aspirin I made the same way that I made the Twinkie box. The Etch-a-Sketch, where I just bought one of those world's smallest brand of Etch-a-Sketch, and I had to paint it yellow and red and then weather it to look like the one in the game. The little cat skull was tough. I'm not as good as the guy who I bought the other skulls off of, but he didn't have a cat skull, at least not a small cat, which I think is like a bobcat or something. He has lions and saber-tooths, but that's a little too big. So I tried to sculpt it about the right size, but yeah, not as good as him. The big metal flashlight, I just basically had to paint and weather. Wasn't a whole lot to that. Same with the canteen, I just bought one and painted it. The little red flashlight I did make. I cut some kind of piece out of the inside of a pen to make the handle. The top part I sculpted, and then I cut a little piece of clear plastic into a circle and then glued it on the top, and then used another tiny little piece of plastic to make the button, and then painted it. Oh, I did make some of the books on the bookshelf. I just used a piece of foam to make it look like the pages, and then wrapped a piece of manila folder around it and then painted it. That was pretty easy. The buttons I made, I bought these little, I think they're called nail art. They're supposed to be things you glue on your fingernails or something, but they're just little tiny chrome circles with glue on the back of them, which I didn't use the glue, but they were just the right size. I actually used them for the buttons on my Mr. Evilcheese figure. I took screenshots of the buttons from the game and just printed them out on sticker paper and stuck them on there. And then I took some of them little teeny tiny nails that I mentioned before and glued them on the back so that I can actually pin them on her jacket if I wanted to. Okay, the rabbit's foot I ended up making, even though we had a 6-scale rabbit's foot, it was not really 6-scale. It was supposed to be, but it just looked too big. So I made my own, and I got just a little piece of metal that I don't even know what the hell it went to. It was about the right shape at the end. I took a little piece of plastic that would be like sort of like the bone inside, and then glued a bunch of that Tibetan lamb fur. I had some white also around it. So if you touch it, it actually feels like there's something in there, just like a real rabbit's foot. And then there's teeny tiny little chain you could buy at the craft store, and that's what I got, some of those ball chains, and that's really all I had to do with that. For her base stickers, I just took a piece of white paper and stuck it over the base and then rubbed on it to get the shape, and then scanned it, put it into Photoshop, and then found a picture from the game to use for the game art. And then I looked up some wood floor pictures and then just printed them out, cut them out, and stuck the wooden one right onto the base. And then the other one I stuck onto a piece of cardboard, real thin cardboard, and then cut it out so that it's removable. For this handgun, I sent a message up into space, and this alien came down, landed, dropped off this weird material, which I later found out was his poop that he wanted to get off of his ship because it was stinking up the ship. And I went over and grabbed it And while I was holding it, I was thinking about, I need to make a little tiny gun for Clementine. And it kind of suddenly started turning into the shape of that. And when I looked down, it was just a little teeny tiny gun. It was amazing. And I said, thanks, alien. And he didn't know what I was saying because he didn't speak English. And he just flew away and making a disgusting face because I was playing with his alien poo. But it's not my fault his alien poo is magic and can turn into little tiny teeny 6-scale guns. So I don't care if he thinks I'm a weirdo. So I got home, all I had to do was paint it black and brown, and that's how I got that gun. But I think that's about everything. If you have any questions, you can comment in the below if you want to know how I did something. I think I went over the main things that I did. Well, thanks for watching. This video, I'm guessing, probably wasn't as entertaining as the last one, but it's kind of hard to joke around when I'm going over all this stuff trying to remember how exactly I did it. But thanks for watching, and this is Mr. Evilcheese, and goodbye!
Hey everyone, it's Clementine from The Walking Dead, and you are watching Mr. Evilcheese and Zombie Cat. Don't be a shitbird and subscribe already. Do it. Thanks.